views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to editors and reporters and writers and filmmakers and photographers. And even this evening, we're going to talk to an app creator from the Bronx. But to get started, we're going to talk to somebody who really just got a wonderful promotion, a wonderful Bronx journalist. And now she is the new executive editor from City Limits. My longtime friend, Jeanmarie Evelly, congratulations on the new job.
Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate that.
Um, her calmness in answering that belies her excitement about it. And I know that
I'm very excited.
This is really a wonderful thing. Listen, first of all, let's both do a shout out to Jarrett Murphy, who has been an incredible leader and visionary of what City Limits could be. So he's leaving. And then they went around like this and said, oh, okay, you. Tell me a little bit about the process that got you to this point.
Yes, well, luckily they did make that selection. So Jarrett, who, as you said, has been at the helm of City Limits for the past 14 years. Well, he's been with City Limits since 2010. So he's actually been, since 2007, and has been the leader at the top of the editorial helm since 2010. So Jarrett has obviously done a really wonderful job of steering the ship for the past decade. And yeah, he'll be departing from us. He'll still be a contributing editor for us and still sort of working with City Limits, but he's going to be moving on to some new chapter in his professional career as well. So I've been with City Limits since 2018. I originally came on to run our youth program, which is a youth journalism training program for New York City high school students. And I was doing that and also reporting half the time. And then I was deputy editor and then managing editor for the past 2 years or so. And so now, yeah, I'm really honored and excited about the new post and so grateful to have it. I love City Limits and I'm so happy to be here.
Just one more word about Jarrett. He was at the helm of building something that really became something very important, especially as other media outlets fell apart or collapsed or didn't do what they used to do. Or we can go on and the numbers of things that have been cut from local and New York City journalism. But City Limits has not only maintained its stature and position, but it's grown. So this puts a significant amount of responsibility in your hands. What do you see as the biggest challenges and things that you're going to have to really figure out how to work on?
Yeah, well, I think it's always, I think we were talking about this before we went live, but, just making sure that we're really providing that local coverage and that New York City focus that I think is something that we're always so, worried about we're losing in the media in general. I mean, there's so many great local news outlets here in New York City, but probably not as many as there used to be, definitely not as many as there used to be a decade ago, 2 decades ago. And so we take that job really seriously. And for me, it's really about, continuing the work that City Limits, as you said, has been doing for decades. We're actually celebrating our 45th anniversary this year. Wow. So it's a big one. So we've been around since 1976. And like you said, my editor, Jarrett, has been shepherding the site for the past decade, also including moving it from a print magazine to online only. And we want to continue doing that. We're going to be covering and are already covering the 2021 elections a lot. There's obviously a lot to cover there with all the city council races that'll be coming up over the next few months for a primary in June. Continuing our coverage of the COVID-19 crisis, continuing our coverage of the housing and development beats, and we're also hoping to be ramping up our climate coverage as well. So,
among the many things that pleases me about this is that you did some of your "quote unquote" training here in the Bronx at the Norwood News. Talk to me just about that, and also you covered transportation and the MTA for City Limits. Talk to me about how that was a good conditioner for what you're doing now. What do you?
Oh yeah.
And in a way, it's kind of a little roadmap for young journalists who say, gee, how can I get a job like that?
Oh,
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so I got my start reporting in the Bronx, like you said. My first job out of journalism school in like 2009 was for the Norwood News, which at the time was called, it was actually more than one paper, if you remember. We had some other like monthly and every other week neighborhood newspapers. So I was technically reporting in the beginning for a small paper that no longer is around, but was run by the same team as the Norwood News, called the Tremont Tribune. So I was covering the
Wow.
Tremont area.
I remember that. Yes. That
So I was the sole reporter.
It was they had a vision of doing community newspapers because of their frankly Jordan Moss's vision of what community
Absolutely.
newspapers could be. So they created ones in different neighborhoods. Didn't last, but that's what you did. Wow, that's fascinating.
That was my original. We had the Mount Hope Monitor at the time, the Tremont Tribune. They were free papers, so I got my start there, really doing everything, covering community board meetings. I would help like deliver the papers to sites. I also worked in between my semesters in J school for Buddy Stein's other newspapers in the South Bronx, so for the Hunts Point Express and the Mott Haven Herald. So I got a really good, before I even joined the Norwood News, primer in covering a lot of Bronx neighborhoods, which I loved so much. I loved my time reporting in the Bronx.
What you have just said, in a way, is music to my ears. Many young people ask me, gee, what can I do? How can I get involved? But listen, if you listen to all the things that Jeanmarie did, I'm going to say it for her, not well paid, not very glamorous, all those kinds of things. But if you do those things, then you can get to, and if you can do those things, you can get a good job.
And it's a great way to learn your reporting chops. There's nothing
Yes.
like covering local news and neighborhood news that'll teach you how to report, how to cultivate sources, how to talk to people better than a local news job, I think.
We're giving like, reporting 101 here. My thing would be, number one, you got to care. And number two, you got to care about doing the right job so that you're really telling a story. A lot of times when you work for a place, and it's not only a newspaper or a TV station or whatever it is, you see things and you say, gee, this could be done differently or better, or here's a new idea. Do you have that kind of vision, or are you pretty much so happy to just get the thing out every day with new stuff?
I think a little bit of both, but we're definitely looking to do, I'm really excited about the team that we've got. As you've mentioned, City Limits has, we're still a small operation relatively compared to a lot of bigger newsrooms, but we are I think right now we're at the largest staff that we've had. So we have great reporters on our team and really excited to continue working with them and to really continue to get more eyes on their work. And we're hoping to do some interesting investigations and some cool group projects in the next year too. So that's something I'm definitely working on.
Do you have stories in your mind or things that you will do, or are you really going to get used to saying, well, this is nice, I'll give it to so-and-so?
I'm trying to jump in and do some reporting where I can. Whether that will be a formal beat, haven't really carved that out yet. I've been doing some kind of just like COVID-19 related stories here and there, but mostly assigning and editing. Yeah, I think for the large part. But we'll definitely be doing, I think, a lot of bigger collaborative stories as a team is something that we're hoping to do. So getting, the different beats. Everyone kind of covers their own beat here at City Limits, but I think that there's a lot of potential for more overlap and sort of group reported projects. So we've been talking about that.
The interrelatedness of not only the stories, but of the way the city works. It's like you talk about transit, but you don't realize you got to talk about jobs in the same thing, or you've got to talk about poverty because who is taking, doesn't have the car, that kind of thing. And if you can get that interrelatedness, I mean, you may not think it's that innovative, but I think it's a tremendous idea.
Yeah, nothing in New York City happens in a silo, so absolutely.
The politics now, and we here at BronxNet and on my other show, Bronx Talk, where we've got a lot of work to do. This is going to be a very interesting time of transition for New York City. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on covering it? I mean, I know we find the challenge of, there could be 40 candidates in June who are running for the city council throughout the Bronx. That's a lot to, and you've got the whole city, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's definitely a lot of races, which makes it an exciting time, right? But it can definitely feel a little hard to keep track of. So far, we've had and Jarrett Murphy, as you mentioned, to my editor and my predecessor as the executive editor. He's actually, we're lucky enough to have him for on full-time staff for the next handful of months, and he's going to be
Oh, that's good.
covering some of the big sort of top ballot races. So the mayor's race, the public advocate's office. The Manhattan
Controller.
DA's race. I'm sorry, yes, the comptroller office. No, not the public advocate. Sorry about that. The Manhattan DA's race, which has been very competitive as well. But we're also planning, and we're sorting that out now, ways to cover the city council races, which obviously are incredibly important.
And then that will lead up to a discussion of who's going to be the speaker of the city council, which is
Yeah.
interesting. Of course, Rafael Salamanca's name has been put out there. Do you have a sense of the direction of the city? I had a conversation with somebody last night and said that, and I hate to use the word progressive because it means all kinds of crazy things to all kinds of people, but there is an incredible amount of energy of young progressive thinking in the city of New York. I mean, I see it in the Bronx like crazy, and I tell people all the time, don't be surprised that AOC came out of the Bronx. We grow these people. So, I mean, that's my thought. Any thoughts from you before we let you go?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think the 2016 election, right, galvanized a lot of, you know, there's always been people working hard in these areas, right? And there's always that activity, but I think it took kind of like that excitement and that sort of energy really got galvanized after 2016, and we're still seeing that. So I think, yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of maybe interesting races to watch this year. So it should be,
It's going to
something
keep
to
us all
see.
busy, I'll tell you that.
Yes, definitely.
Final question, and I'm finding, getting guests on television is incredibly more simple because of doing Zoom and, virtual. Do you find that reporting is harder or easier? And now that you're going to be responsible for a lot of reporting, is it harder or easier in this way?
I think both, right? I think there are pros and cons. I've had this discussion with several of our reporters. I think it's easier in some ways, right? Because a lot of events now are being done on Zoom, a lot of press conferences, community board meetings, civic meetings, which makes it easier as a reporter to attend, right? And even to watch after the fact. If you missed a community board meeting now, it's on line the next day and you can just watch it the next morning, which as a reporter is obviously great. But you also kind of lose obviously a bit of that in-person kind of reporting stuff that comes, like I've been talking to some reporters of mine where it's like to track down one little tidbit or confirm something normally you could just like kind of corner a source at the meeting, right? And ask them. And we don't have that now. So it definitely, I think it does both, right? I think it's maybe easier in certain ways. And I think that like even the city meetings being, I think, online now is going to be here to stay regardless. The city has
No
said that.
question about
So
it.
it's definitely changed that. So it'll make it easier for when we can't make it out to those community board meetings in person, which is good.
Ladies and gentlemen, the new executive editor of City Limits is Jeanmarie Evelly. We couldn't be more happy about it. Sorry to see Jared go. He's going to be around. You think
Oh,
he's not going to
he'll
be?
definitely be around, and we'll be keeping tabs on him. And I'm sure he'll.
Sure.
You can probably
And
even get him back on here.
good luck, and
Thank
stay
you
in
so
touch.
much.
We're going folks, just look at citylimits.org, and you'll see Jeanmarie's fingerprints everywhere.
Thank you, Gary.
All the best, Jeanmarie. Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break, and then wait till you see this new app that a couple of Bronx guys have created. Resources for the Bronx and the city of New York galore. Don't go away.